Greetings to the coaches and players of the Orinda Baseball Association, and welcome to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. My name is Craig Muter. I'm the Director of Communications here at the Hall of Fame. In 1905, the powers that be in baseball, the owners, decided they wanted to know where baseball came from. As we tell students who come through the museum every year, believe it or not, in 1905, there was no Google. You could not type into the internet, where did baseball come from, to find out. So they used the 1905 equivalent of the internet, which was newspapers. They sent out thousands of classified advertisements to papers all over the country, saying, if you know where baseball got started, please write us a letter and tell us. And the reason the owners were doing this was there was a raging debate at the time about whether baseball was purely an American sport, played only in America, or whether it had evolved from other classic stick and ball games like cricket. So about 2 years later, in 1907, a mining engineer living in Colorado named Abner Graves sees one of these little ads and sends a letter to the editor, to the Akron Beacon Journal, which is a paper that's located outside of Cleveland, Ohio, still exists today. And he said, yeah, I know how baseball began. In 1839, I was a boy of 5 years old living in Cooperstown, New York, and I watched as Abner Doubleday was commanding a Union Army regiment that was encamped in Cooperstown, doing its maneuvers. And Doubleday laid out the bases on a field for recreation for his soldiers on their downtime. And that's how baseball began, according to Abner Graves. And the owners of the baseball teams in the major leagues loved that explanation because at the time, Doubleday had no known connection to baseball. And as far as the owners were concerned, there was another great thing about Abner Doubleday. He was dead, so you couldn't go ask him if he invented the game of baseball because he wasn't around to answer the question anymore. So the owners said, yeah, this is great. An American hero invented our game in Cooperstown in 1839, and we don't want to know anymore. So they published a little 30-page paper saying, to the best of our knowledge, this is what happened. They put it on a shelf, and there it sat. Now, when you hit the field this spring in the Orinda Baseball Association, you're not going to remember me or most of what I just said, but you got to promise me you remember this for the rest of your life. Doubleday did not invent baseball, okay? It was a myth, it was a story, it never happened. At the time in 1839, Abner Doubleday was a cadet at West Point and wouldn't have been allowed off the base. He was nowhere near Cooperstown. Abner Graves made up this story as a way to honor a man he considered an American hero. Baseball was not invented by any one person at any one time. It evolved over many, many decades, mainly with kids playing with sticks and balls in fields in rural America, but also from classic English ball games like cricket and rounders and a game named stool ball. Baseball and the United States grew up together. There's hardly any other institution and there's no other sport that can make that claim. And as a result, people in this country feel very protective of the game of baseball. And I'll give you a couple examples of how that works. First of all, I know some of you out there saw the movie 42 a couple years ago about Jackie Robinson. 42 was the movie where Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier. April 15, 1947, he becomes the first African-American player to appear in a modern big league game when he played for the Brooklyn Dodgers. That's 7 full years before a Supreme Court case in this country called Brown versus Board of Education, which is the landmark civil rights case in the history of this country's Supreme Court. Baseball was not only reflecting history, it was making history, it was changing history. That's why it's so important. That's why people feel very protective of it. That's example number one. Example number two is much more recent. August 2nd, 2013, Ryan Braun of the Milwaukee Brewers suspended 65 games that day, the rest of the season, for performance-enhancing drug use. You couldn't go on any internet site, any television station, turn on any radio anywhere without hearing Ryan Braun's name that day. News or sports, it was the story of the day in the United States. That same day, August 2nd, 2013, a linebacker for the NFL's Denver Broncos, a Pro Bowl linebacker named Von Miller, suspended for 4 games, about a quarter of their season, for the same thing, performance-enhancing drug use. And nobody cared. And it wasn't because the NFL isn't wildly popular in this country, because it is. It's because baseball is supposed to be about something different. Baseball is supposed to be about something better. And every time you walk on the field to play baseball, you have that responsibility on your shoulders. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's also a lot of fun because you are playing the national pastime and you have all the privileges and responsibility that go with it. That is the end of my little talk. I want you to come and visit us in Cooperstown someday because it truly is the place where baseball's pulse beats the strongest. And I want you to have a great season on the field, Orinda Baseball Association. Thanks for listening.